how to make these creative textures with fondant and sugar paste. I think in UK you call it sugar paste. I would say this is like bakers or cake decorators' nightmare, is dried fondant. So I've been having this fondant out of the bag. It comes, if you know, Satin Ice bags, just plastic bag. Any fondant comes in the same form. So it's been out since yesterday, and you can see all the crackly and dry things here on this fondant, but it's still soft, so it still have enough body to stay soft and fresh inside, but this dry and crackly on the outside. And that's what gives you the best texture on your cake, because all of these things won't incorporate in your fondant and won't make it smooth and nice and pleasant to work with. That's why these techniques and something like creative textures with fondant is really nice to use if you live in a dry climate, or you have your AC running all of the time and your fondant dries on you and you don't know what to do. That's the other way to use it. So I have I don't know, about maybe half a pound and a half, like maybe half a kilo, I would say, of white fondant. Another type of fondant I'm going to use is Satin Ice Pearl Shimmer, and it's been out for maybe a few hours, so it is dry. It is absolutely dry on the outside, but when I break it, you see all the crackles. So that's what I'm going to use for my texture. This is the Satin Ice Pearl Shimmer, and I have this small packet that I wanted to use today, and I love this pearl shimmer fondant even for my cake and everything, so I use it all the time. And few more things we are going to need is these dried fondant pieces. These pieces are, this is just brown fondant that's been drying in a bag for maybe a week or something, and then I just used my rolling pin and I bashed it to make this crumbles and things. Oh, I see so many friends tuning in. How are you guys? How are you doing today? I hope you're doing well. It's been sunny and nice outside, but a little bit too hot. It feels like living in Florida. So I have the same thing in 3 different colors. This is just Dusty Rose gel color. So I painted my I colored my fondant a little bit, and I'm going to use these things too. And next two main things I'm going to use is sanding sugar or like sparkling sugar, but the regular sugar you can buy at any cake decorating store. And I have in 2 different colors. One I have white, and the other one is like pearl and a little bit, to my taste, a little bit fancier. But I cannot buy any more of this type because I bought it at some cake show, so I don't remember the brand. And let me check your comments. Yay! Yes, this pearl shimmer is interesting and it's really worth a try. And they have it in silver, gold, and pearl. But I like pearl because if I want to color, I would color it myself. And another thing I'm going to use is edible glitter flakes. It looks like fish food. So it's shiny, but it's light. It looks like pearl shiny wafer paper or something like that. So let's begin. So for my texture, I'm going to use a piece of that, because I'm trying to take some pieces that are not so dry and mix them with much drier pieces. So let's have fun. I have everything on my table, and I'm working on silicone mat, so I'm not working directly on my table. I'll crush it up a little bit. this again. And if you live in a humid climate, you can leave it out for a longer period of time, or you can use a food dehydrator or even your oven on a lowest setting for a few minutes. Just control it and make sure that you know what you're doing and what stage your fondant in. So the main purpose of this technique, your fondant should be dry on the outside. You can hear it's dry, but it's still soft and pliable on the inside. Let's add a little bit of this gray and pink mixture, but I want this to mainly be white and resemble white marble, like the one you see in the fancy magazines. And now we are going to mix this thing together. And I'm not trying to mix it through, I'm not trying to change the texture as much. I'm just trying to combine these all pieces in one large piece and see what parts I like more. I see that my pearl shimmer is coming through and my pink pieces are here, so I'm just trying to press it together and have all these dry things to show up. So like that. And you can mix as much or as little as you can, so you can control how much texture you want to see on your cake. And I love these pockets. If you can see, there is like a dry pocket with fondant peeking through. And I'll mix it a little bit more. And place it on my table. So now I'm going to use cornstarch. You know me, I love working with cornstarch. So I'm going to adjust a little bit, because when you add cornstarch and then you mix it and you fold it together, the cornstarch will prevent your layers from sticking together. So you can pull it apart and you can mix it and have all these creative layers in between. Okay. Let's try rolling it out and we'll see how it goes. And then if we are not happy, we can reuse it again and roll it out again. I have a dummy cake, so I'm going to work on a dummy cake because you don't want me to see baking a cake. And here, I don't know how in the place where you live, but here in Chicago we have some troubles with getting flour and sugar, and it's been sold everywhere. So what I have here on my brush is just a little bit of piping gel, because when I'm working with dummy cakes and I'm covering my dummy cakes in fondant, I prefer to use piping gel instead of Crisco or like vegetable fat, because in my experience, if you keep your cakes on the shelf for a certain period of time and you live in a very humid climate, like I used to live in Florida or even here in Illinois, when it's raining, it's just miserable to be outside and it's very humid. And when I'm using Crisco for my cake dummies, in some period of time it starts to smell very unpleasant, because probably it goes bad or something, and that's why I prefer to use piping gel for my cakes, for my dummy cakes when I'm working with a dummy cake. Of course, if you're working on a real cake, you don't need to add anything. You can just use your cake, or if you're putting ganache on your cake, you just spray it with water or use a brush to apply a little bit of water to your cake. So I'm going to roll this out, and I'll try to be intentional, and I'm trying to go just one direction from the inside to the outside. And I'm watching, if you see my head, it's down because I'm watching really closely to all the textures that I'm getting in this particular case, because you see these flakes, like these parts are flaking off, and these layers, that's what I want to have on my cake, and that's what I want to preserve. So that's what I'm looking for. And if you have some, if you see that something is coming up, some like interesting flakes or layers, I'm going to pull in a perpendicular direction just to open it up a little bit. Let me know how you're doing, if you can see me and you can hear me. And if you have any question, just type them down. I really like this piece because all of these parts are flaking off and I see different layers. So, and I'm not trying to make it in a circle, like in a round shape, because I'm going to assemble this on a cake in pieces. That's another nice thing about working with this technique, or technique like this, like creative textures with fondant, because if you're just a beginner and you do not know how, or you have trouble covering a whole cake in one sheet of fondant, you just trying and using pieces. Okay, so what I have here a few parts, and I'm going to tear this apart because I want to use some of that, but not all of these textures. So I place it on the side for a second, and I'm going to use this piece first. So you can see all the textures I have here. I'm going to add a little bit of my, so I have here pearl shimmer. I have, the rest is like mainly white fondant. And I think I even like this. No, I'll use this side for the beginning. And I'm going to add a little bit of this sanding sugar to some places to just bring more visual interest here and there, and just a touch of this edible, so this is edible glitter flakes, and they look like those mineral deposits. If you see real marble and you see all the speckles and nice things, is because of the mineral deposits in your marble. So that's what we are trying to achieve. And I'm just rolling it out to my regular thickness. I'm not trying to make this fondant thicker or thinner, no more than usual. And I'll add a little bit of this pink dry fondant on top to accentuate some parts which I really like that. And I will roll out again. So now I have all this dry specks. So as you can see, it's shiny, it's still pliable, and it stays in one piece, and it's still like it acts like your normal regular fondant, but I have all these pockets and all these layers in my fondant, and I'm going to apply this to cake. So I'm applying this to a top part, and on the side you won't see as much of the side part, but when you're working with fondant and this technique, you do like the regular way you're covering fondant, cake and fondant. And I need to add a little bit of piping gel on the side just to make it stick. And when I'm doing techniques like this, because they are supposed to mimic your real like stones and things you see in nature, I usually do not go with sharp edges, because in my opinion it looks nice and delicate and more realistic in a way, if it can be any realistic, because it's still fondant. I do not go and I do not make sharp edges, so this another the advantage of using this technique, because if you do not know how to work with fondant, or you're just a beginner and want to do something creative, that's the perfect technique to start with. So I have my second piece, and my favorite part is this one. So I'm going to add just a little bit of this shiny crystals to bring attention to these pockets, especially where I have this combination of different, let me bring it up a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add crystals here, and to this part to bring attention to this bright part and this part. Let me put it on the side. And usually when I do something like this, of course I'm wearing gloves, but I'm doing this just for demonstration purposes. Nobody's going to eat my dummy cake. I'm not wearing much, and I have a clean towel to clean my hands after that. So do not worry, I'm not trying to poison anyone. Or do I? How are you? Hello from Sydney, Australia. Hello, Australia. What time is that over there? It's probably next day morning. It's Wednesday here in Chicago, and who knows, nobody already remember what the day of the week is. So, and I want this piece to be a little bit larger, so I'm bringing these parts together, and I'm going to place it on a cake and assemble to this part to be my focal point on the cake, and to bring them together and close all the gaps when here I have this overlap. What I'm going to use is I'm going to use my Dresden tool and press it and gently pull on the remaining parts. So I'm trying to bring them together and have them on the same level. So that's how you assemble these parts on the cake, and that's why I'm trying to do and work in parts and not just one piece, because if you have just one piece but you need to cover whole cake, for example, you're not working on a small dummy. This one is, I think, 7 or 8 inches, so it's relatively small, and if you want to cover the whole cake, you need to have more than just one piece. And for the rest of these parts, I'm going to tear apart my previous pieces and bring them together as well. And usually when I have gaps and places like this, where I would like to have this covered, but I do not want to place another piece of fondant, I will use smaller brush. Where's my small brush? And piping gel. This is just clear piping gel. Apply in the middle. Even if you're working on a real cake and you have gum paste, not gum paste, ganache as your main coverage, I still would prefer to use a little bit of piping gel to apply crystals here. So and I'm going to take just a few crystals at the time and place them inside like that. So piping gel will hold these crystals in place, and I will have this shiny deposit of my sugar in the cake, and maybe a little bit more of this flakes. If you have any other types of glitter you like to use, feel free to add it, or super pearl or any shiny things you would like to add to your cake. And I have this piece, that's my last piece. And I'm looking at this piece and what part I want to add to the cake. So I'll probably go with this part and add just a little bit of my sanding sugar and fish food pieces. That wasn't a little bit, that was a little bit too much, but we'll go with that. Okay. So this piece is almost dry. And if you place it on a cake or you place it in the fridge, it will be totally fine. Nothing is going to happen because this is just fondant. When it's already assembled on a cake, moisture won't hurt as much as when it's on a table. Okay, and again, I have all these parts and all these interesting places where I want to add my piping gel and crystals. So let me cut this off. And let me know what you think. If you have any questions or you want me to show you something up close. And okay, so this is my piping gel, and I'm going to take a little bit more of these crystals and place them inside like that. So the one I need will stay and the rest will fall, which is not a big deal. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, and a little bit of this. You can see these are almost like clear, thin, shiny flakes. It's called edible glitter flakes, and they definitely look like edible glitter flakes. Okay, so what I have here is my cake. Let me clean it a little bit, and we'll move to the next step. How are you doing over there? So you can see I used just one piece of fondant, and I roll it on a thin layer, turn it apart, and assemble in four different pieces. And this technique is nice because you can do the same on your side, and you can cover your cake without worrying how your fondant is going to act, if it's too dry or too wet. So that's why I like this technique. So for the next step, I'm going to show you how to use how to make bas relief using the same pieces of fondant. I usually keep these parts, like the remaining parts of this dry fondant, because I either going to reuse it on a cake and make bas relief, or I'm going to place it in a bag, and when next time when I'm going to need a little bit more of that, I will have it in my bag already mixed and dry. That's how I did this part. So these were the fondant from other parts from another cake I made earlier. Let me clean my table a little bit so you can see and we can have a clean place to work. So for the next step, the main things I'm going to use is these pieces of fondant, and this is my favorite mold I use to make all the bas relief designs on my cakes, because it's so versatile, and I'll show you the way how to make it even more interesting and unique to your design. So I'm using my fluffy brush. If you know, I know that Michelle is watching and she loves how I say a fluffy brush. So I'm going to use my fluffy brush and add cornstarch. I have a jar of cornstarch on the side, so that's what I use. And with this technique, don't be afraid to use too much, because our goal is to make it look dry and crackly and like it's in real nature. When you can see this marble slabs, they are not perfect, and that's what we are trying to do. We are trying to mimic something that is not perfect but beautiful. And let me clean my hands, because for this technique I need my hands to be clean. So I have my mold. This is First Impressions flower mold number 1, and I have a link somewhere in the comments so you can check it on. I have a link to Amazon, so I have all the names and tools and everything I use, and the link somewhere in the comments. Or if you have a question, just type it down and I'll go back after the live demonstration and I'll answer all your questions. So I'm taking my pieces, not much, maybe a few pieces, and I'm not mixing it through, and I'm not making this fondant look fresh, and I'm going to press it in my mold just like that. And another thing, that I'm not trying to fill my mold, like fill it out to the top. I'm just trying to use small pieces here and there, and more cornstarch on my fingers. And I'm pressing it really hard into the mold. This mold is very nice because it's so soft and pliable, and it gives me really great results and impressions. And if I see that some holes are poking through my fondant, that's what I'm looking for. And you can see that my mold is not even like half full. It still dips in and it goes down, and I press it really thinly. So to release this design from my mold, I'm turning this upside down and gently pulling on my fondant. And I have all these crackly bits and pieces, and that's the perfect thing to have. So I'll place it on the side for a moment to dry, and I'll make more of these different designs. Again, I'm taking a small piece of my fondant and press it into my mold with cornstarch on my fingers. like that, and all the holes and everything will be perfect on the cake. So that's what I have. Second one, and I just did 2 examples of the same mold. Let's do this one. And I'll read your comments while I'm doing this. How do you do this? Do I do what? Can you please specify your question? I didn't understand what you wanted to know. So to release upside down on the side, and I want to have this drier beads and this texture more than just white pieces. So I'm going to use this part and press it into my mold like that. And let's do a few more pieces. So my fondant is dry on the outside but still pliable, so I can place it in my mold and get an impression. You can see all the details and even some of the flakes get onto my fondant on my mold, and I'm going to use it on a cake. A few more. And I'm trying to make my fondant pieces in the mold as thin as I possibly can to release it from the mold, so they will be looking much lighter and ethereal and interesting when they are thin, so it's almost like see-through fondant. And because they are relatively dry, it's easy to release them from the mold. A little bit more cornstarch on my fluffy brush. The video platform I'm using, so you can see yourself and a demo on the screen. I use what I use is OBS Studio software, but it's not something is easy to explain. It's just one video. But if you want to look into something like the software I use is OBS Studio, OBS Studios. And again, so let's see if I have enough, and I'll put it on the side and bring my cake in. So my first pieces became a little bit drier and ready to use, and I'm going to arrange them on a cake. So how I go about arranging things like this on a cake? I have this mean rivers or like splits in between my fondant, so it's almost like an S shape, and I have this one. So I want to bring more attention. I'm looking into my cake usually, and I'm trying to find a place where I want to bring more attention and make it brighter and make it more interesting. So I would rather go and place my molds somewhere along this side, because this platform is empty and not so interesting compared to other places, because here I have this crack, here I have this deposit of pink things, this is the darker interesting part, but this one in the middle is not so interesting compared to the rest of the pieces, like here and here. And when I'm applying my decorations and my molds, I'm looking for places I wanted to cover or I wanted to bring more attention to. So first piece is going to be, let's do this one. I'm going to turn this upside down on my hand. I have, this is the gum glue but water it down. If you want to use water, you can use just water, but a little bit, like just a little bit. I'm not using a piping gel because I need these pieces to stick to my fondant and dry. And piping gel will stay soft for much longer, and I don't want it to stay soft. That's why I'm using gum glue or water instead of piping gel to apply this piece to my cake. And I'm going around my piece so all my edges are covered in gum glue, and I'm going to place it on a cake somewhere along these sides. And I'm going to use my Dresden tool, so I'm pressing it down and to melt it and to bring it together and make it look like it's one piece. I'm going to use my Dresden tool and drag it on the surface. So I'm melting these pieces together, and if some pieces want to be removed, that's totally fine. But you can see, if you go around your edges and you press your pieces down, it will look like it's growing out of your cake and not just a piece you placed on top. And that's the difference between making pieces really thin. It will make it look more realistic compared to just thick pieces when you fill your mold up to the top. So my decorations already in small pieces and thin and parts of the flower. So, and I know that I have this crack, so I'm trying not to cover it up to make it look more realistic, like that. And I'm going to do the same to the next piece, upside down. Just a touch of water or gum glue, as little as you can. You don't need much, but you need to moisten your edges to make it stick and to be able to blend them together. Let me see what way it will go, like that. And again, my Dresden tool. I'll start from this side. And usually I'm using the sharp edge of the Dresden tool and not this one. I find that the sharp edge works better in bringing these pieces together. And when I have an overlap, so I see that I have some pieces underneath, I'm just removing fondant where I don't need to have it and blending them together, making sure I'm not covering any interesting pieces of my design. So you can see that now we have this marble design and bas relief in a marble design as well. And this technique is very great to work on a cake when you're tired and you don't want to work on a cake, or you want to have something to offer to your clients which is not as expensive to make as, for example, sugar flowers or even wafer paper flowers, because they take hours to make. And this technique still give you an impressive result without being very time consuming, or you don't need to have expensive tools. This mold, I think it cost about like $20-something, and the rest is just basic things you have or you usually should have on hand. And I'm playing around with my pieces and I'm looking for something to place here, but I don't want to cover this pink part and I don't want to cover this shiny part, so that's why I turned apart and use just one tiny piece of that. And don't be afraid to use it in a way you wanted to use it. If you do not agree with the way I place this flower, or you think that it will look like better in some other places, you don't need to have any rules or instruction. You just do what feels right to you, because that will make you happy. And if you are following rules and you do not like it, that means that the rules are not for you. Because the same way of this technique, or using fondant or molds, that's not the right way, or like the right way to use this. And here I have a tiny spot when I want to bring like I want to add something, because it looks a little bit empty and disconnected. So to bring these pieces together, I'm going to use my Dresden tool and just shape this petal in a way like it's a part of the larger arrangement, like that. And I will bring it together and melt it together, because some of these parts are higher and some of them are lower, so I want to bring it down and separate petals to melt together. So like that. Hello from Philippines. That's amazing. It's also, you also probably it's the next day over there. And here it's only 12 something, almost 1 p.m. And so I have my pieces here. I would add small tiny beads, but a little bit later. And I want to continue, but I do not want, remember I have this main crack and I have these two filled with crystals. Let me bring it to where you can see the shine. So this is my main focal point and my visual interest, and I have these two cracks filled with glitter and crystals. But here is another empty spot that I want to continue my design. So I want my design to move, for example, from here and like be like a snake or in an S shape, because then your eye, when you have design only in the center, your eye will look only in the center of your cake or like any of your designs, and just like that's it, nothing to move and to go more. I'll show you this the cake I made in a second, and I'll explain what I mean by that. So I want to continue my design but a little bit on the other side. And I'm using thinner pieces. So this is my main flower, these two my main flowers on the design, and these parts are a little bit thinner, so I'll bring them together quicker and show you the final result. What am I making? I'm making fondant white marble technique in fondant. So we are playing with different fondant textures, and this one I call it white marble because it should look like or resemble white marble design, like real marble. And another piece will go here, and I'll put them together there. And because this piece has some black parts and like dark gray speckles, it will drive our eye and connect all these pieces. So I have a group of dark speckles here, here, and it moves here. So if you're looking for example, you're looking for a dark spot, your eye will go here, 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 and you will look all around. If you're looking for flowers, your eye will go all other different places. Sparkles, here I have sparkles here, here, here. So it's not like in one place I have sparkles, in another place I have flowers, and third placement is for dark spots or like pink spots. So try to have your pieces or your design elements connected, but not in one spot, in a way where you can, your eye can move. So this part is much lighter and thinner compared to this one, because this is my focal point and I want this part to be the main part, because I have dark, I have sparkles, and I have flowers here. So all my designs should bring you to this point in my head, at least something what I'm playing in my head and planning to do in my head. And another small piece on here. Let's see how it goes. No, I don't like it here. Let's do something creative. So this is the piece from the mold, and it's already dry. So I can cut it with using scissors or craft knife. And I want something to go here, like that. Again, just a touch of water or gum glue. Put it here using a sharp edge of my Dresden tool and press it down like that. So to bring together all my layers. So I think I need to add just a touch of piping gel and sparkles on this side, and we are almost done. Okay. So this is technique I can play around for hours, because it's just interesting, and I like working with fondant and adding different visual interest in textures. So let me see your read your comments and see if you have any questions. Yes, you can watch later. I'll save it. It will be in the group, so you can go back and rewatch from the beginning. We've been doing this for a little bit less than an hour, so we have 5 minutes to answer questions if you have them. Oh, hi, Leanne. Oh, you're making me shy and blush. And yeah, thank you. Yes, I do love to do things in one monochromatic shades, because it just let me switch you back. Most of my cakes are black, white, dark, because it is something for me much easier to control, and I do not work with it's rare when I make kids cakes or something bright. Usually I do something more subtle, monochromatic, and one color and different shades of one color. So what I wanted to show you is this cake. That's what started the whole thing. I guess this is the front part, but it doesn't matter. So what I'm trying to tell and explain, when I do work on a cake, I have all this, as you can see, all this rivers of color and all these parts where it goes like one way on top and on top. So it's not just flat, it's not just one dimensional, it's different textures and different layers. And usually if I'm working on the side of the cake, I'm trying to place them diagonally. And if you look at this cake, it's just part of the design thing. If you go from the bottom part and up to the right, that will bring people happiness and just in our mind, because it looks like a graph of some sort, which is like growing numbers. So if you're going from one part and up to the right, it will look happy. And I keep this in mind usually when I design something and I'm thinking about something. I know that I need to go up to the right, and it helps me to have all these rules in my head. And you can Google them and find like main design principles and keep them, find some for you that you like. For me, my favorite design principles that I use on my cakes, it should be different shapes. Usually I go for different shapes, like the cake I have over there, so it's narrow and slim and tall, and something bushy on top. Same as here, it's still different shapes because I have flat and I have something that is like curved. So this one, like this S shape type thing, like that. And the third principle I use is that I need to go from the bottom to the right part. So I always, my design should grow. When you're looking upward all the time, it will bring your eye and eye of your client to the top of your cake. And for the most part, I think like the most common thing is to place your flowers on top of the cake right here. So I need to bring an eye of my client upwards to have my flowers to be the focal point of my cake. And these flowers, all of them are wafer paper, and I love them so much. And this cake is relatively big, so it's heavy. Let me know if you have any questions, and if you like that, just like the video. Please follow me on Facebook, Instagram, or any social media as Astashkina Cakes. This side, Astashkina Cakes. And my name is Anna Astashkina, so you can find me on Facebook or on YouTube somewhere. If you have any questions, just message me. You can direct message me on Instagram or on Facebook. Usually I'm trying to be very good with answering your questions, or type it down in the comments, and I'll get, after the video, I'll get back to you and I'll try to answer all your questions if you have them. So thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation, and I hope you enjoyed this demonstration, and I hope I'll be back one day and maybe show you something else. So write it down in the group, and with all your requests, I think Shell will show you and answer your questions too if you have them. So have a wonderful day, and I'm saying you goodbye from my studio in Chicago. I'm Anna Stashkina. Bye bye.